Good morning, everybody. It's 10:30 on the clock on the wall, and today is Thursday, January 27th, 2022. We are located in the St. Croix County Government Center in room 1284. This is the time and the date and the place that was announced and published for the purposes of the Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting for St. Croix County for the month of January. Those who would like to speak, we ask to sign one of our forms on the credenza by the wall before you step up to the microphone to speak. So if you think you might want to speak at some time during the day, there's no penalty for filling out the form. But if you don't fill it out at the outset and you decide later that you want to speak, then please sign it up before you speak. It, of course, helps us to make sure we spell your name right in the records. And it also provides your oath that what you say will be the truth. That removes any need for us to subsequently swear each person before they give their testimony. So we have that. At this time, I will call the meeting to order, and we will introduce ourselves and make sure our microphones work. My name is Buck Malick. I'm a resident of the town of Hudson and a so-called citizen member of this Board of Adjustment.
Dave Peterson, County Board, District 15, Town of Kinnickinnick.
Joe Miller, citizen member, Town of Hammond.
Dave Nickham, citizen member, Town of Baldwin.
And Mike, would you introduce yourself?
Yes, Mike Wozniak, Land Use Administrator in the Community Development Department.
Do you expect to speak?
I'm Ben Hetzel, Land Use and Conservation Specialist. Mike's my supervisor, so if he has any questions, I'm here.
All right, good. Sometimes we are joined by Ellen Denzer, who is the chair of that department, but she's not here yet. Possibly she'll come in later. And Julie Peterson is doing the recording and keeping herself busy doing other work when her hands are not otherwise occupied. I'm going to make a statement for the record that we believe this meeting was properly noticed and published in the newspapers and the postings and things that are required under two separate sets of statutes that pertain to the work of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. If there's anybody who thinks that for some reason the publication was not done properly, this would be the time to state that for the record. And if it be a problem, we'll deal with it. Does anybody have a reason to think that there's any defect in the publication? Never has been in my 15 or so years, but we always ask. We have a set of minutes for the board members to approve or edit. I did notice one little problem, and I should have brought it to you, Julie, before. Nope, it's not a problem. Does anybody on the board have anything to offer by way of edit or change to the minutes? Seeing none, they will stand approved as they were sent out. Now, we have two matters to deal with today, and I propose to deal with them in the same order in which they're listed in the published notice and agenda for the meeting. And Mr. Wozniak, I assume that you're making the presentation.
Yes, I will.
And the floor is yours.
Good morning, board members, public, and applicants that are here with us this morning. The first items we have for consideration of the board are three conditional use permits being requested by the town of St. Joseph, and I'll note that they're acting as their agent is their town engineer, Stantec, with Lee Mann of Stantec here today, as well as I believe representatives of the town of St. Joseph. We have, what we have here is, there's a project to reconstruct Church Street and Egard Street within, and portions of the project, and also some drainage-related improvements down a ravine that runs down from these streets down to the former County Road E right-of-way. I'll note that this is located in Section 27, Town of St. Joseph, and again, we're considering it today because it's located within the Riverway Overlay District. The first request is for a conditional use permit to reconstruct, again, the aforementioned streets which serve 2 or more properties or single-family residences in the lower St. Croix Riverway District, and pursuant to Section 17.36 F3A8. I'll note that there are 2 other thresholds that trigger conditional use permit requirements related to this project, and they include conditional use permit for filling and grading less than 10,000 square feet in the slope preservation zone that does not directly face the river and that do not drain directly into the river. The third request would be a conditional use permit for structural erosion control measures in slope preservation zones, again, Section 17.36 F3A7 in this case. And provided with the materials with the packet, our staff report, which I'm going to run through here, and the conditional use permit application for the 3 requests. We also included utility and drainage easement agreements that had been filed that basically allow for the work to be conducted in properties owned by the City of Stillwater and Steven Studer. Just to get into this, the project request for the CUP, the first CUP, again, is a project to reconstruct 2 public roads that serve residential properties, basically. The project entails providing drainage improvements along Church Street and reconstruction of Church and Egard Streets. Several residents along Church Street have reported increased drainage problems along the streets and yards and in basements of adjacent homes since the reconstruction of Main Street. And Main Street was reconstructed in conjunction with the St. Croix River Crossing project of 2017. Improving drainage conditions will include installing storm sewer pipe under the roadway and improving existing ditches and adjacent grading to better improve surface runoff, and each street surface will be repaved due to their existing poor condition, which is a safety concern. Now, for the second and third CUP requests involved in this project, the town is requesting these CUPs to address erosion problems in a ravine adjacent to the intersection of Church Street and Egard Street. The ravine is also located in the St. Croix Riverway Overlay District. I'd note that the proposed work involves filling and grading operations less than 10,000 square feet in a slope preservation zone, and that does not directly face the river, and installing structural erosion control measures in the slope preservation zone. Some of the existing slopes of the eroded ravine will be regraded, and the downstream portion of the ravine will be lined with rock riprap and to stabilize the steep slopes and to slow stormwater velocity. Most of the stormwater runoff from Church Street is directed towards this ravine. Just a general project location map here. And looking more specifically, the stretches of the two roads highlighted in red, and the ravine area where the work is going to occur, highlighted in this hatched color. A few points regarding the first CUP request. There's approximately 20 parcels abut Church Street and Egard Street. The entirety of Egard Street is located within the St. Croix Riverway Overlay District, which is approximately 325 feet. The existing width of the road is 14 to 16 feet. About 210 feet of Church Street is located in the lower St. Croix Riverway, again with the existing width at about 14 to 15 feet. Wisconsin DOT has a minimum width requirement of 18 feet for paved town roads with 3-foot gravel shoulders. So the town has been in communication with DOT to grant a variance to reconstruct Church Street to a reduced width of 16 feet. Egard Street will meet the minimum 18 feet. Regarding the work in the ravine, subject to 2 different CUPs. The ravine is greater than 200 feet from the ordinary high water mark of the St. Croix River and not located in the floodplain overlay district. I'd note that the existing ravine travels through 3 parcels with 3 different owners, the town of St. Joseph, the city of Stillwater, and Stephen Studer. And the city and Mr. Studer have agreed on drainage and utility easements with the town of St. Joseph, and we've included those easements as exhibits 5 and 6 with the packet materials. Just to give you a little flavor of the work in the ravine, there were a number of photographs taken. We've included some of these in our staff report just to illustrate what that ravine looks like and the erosion issues that are present in the ravine. This photo would be about midway north to south through the ravine, right about where my cursor is here. And a couple other vantage points. Again, you can see the effect of water runoff over the years that's flows through that area. The project areas are not visible from the St. Croix River as shown by the photo in this slide. And this is looking upstream of the site from the southeast, and these notes are basically calling out aspects of the project: location of the ravine outlet, proposed temporary access route for ravine stabilization, approximate location of Church Street and Ravine and Egard Street. And again, it's a wooded bluff, and the existing facilities and the work really isn't going to increase visibility from the river. A few points regarding the first CUP request. Again, the streets aren't visible from the river. Reconstruction is proposed in a manner that minimizes visual impact. Roadside ditches will be used to the maximum extent practical, with curb and gutter only added in certain areas where ditch construction is not feasible. And I'd note that 2 trees would be removed from the right-of-way of Church Street. They pose a safety hazard during construction. Disturbed areas adjacent to the roadways will be revegetated in accordance with DOT standards. The applicant submitted additional erosion and sediment control plans in accordance with our ordinance provisions. Regarding the CUPs related to the work in the ravine, as we've noted, CUP number 2 and 3. Total filling and grading would be approximately 9,200 square feet, with total filling and grading in the slope preservation zone of 3,200 square feet. And as a zoning administrator, I've determined that the structural erosion control measures are necessary to address significant ongoing erosion, which was evident by the photos I showed here earlier in the presentation. The structural erosion control measures located in the slope preservation zone consist of rock line channel, 4 rock weirs, and a double rock pool. These measures are designed with natural materials and are visually inconspicuous. Again, we've received stormwater and erosion control plans in compliance with county requirements. The tree and brush removal will be required for the ravine work. Vegetation to be removed primarily consists of buckthorn, box elder trees, and damaged or leaning trees, dead trees, and fallen trees, and logs. Replanted vegetation will consist of up to 9 trees, riparian seed mix designed for wooded channels, and a native woodland seed mix. The submitted vegetation plan is in compliance with, again, with ordinance requirements. This is just a visual of the work in the ravine from plan view. And I would note that where the 2 streets intersect, the first portion through Mr. Studer's property will essentially be a stormwater pipe. There's actually a manhole and 2 catch basins because the pipe is stepped down to address the grade in the ravine. And that stormwater pipe would daylight down in a rockline channel for the lower drainage through the lower part of the ravine with the rock weirs and the double rock pool down at the base of the ravine, slightly into the former County Road E right-of-way, which was turned back to the town of St. Joseph. I'd note that, again, the applicant's working with DOT on the street width issues. The DNR has not provided comment on this request. And I'd note that we did hear from the town board chair, Teresa Johnson, and she indicated she would attend the meeting, but because the town was the applicant, they wouldn't offer further comment, as might normally be the case for CUP requests that are referred to the town. Your options are to approve, deny, or to approve or deny any combination of the requests. You could table or postpone the decision to absorb information gathered or request additional information. And you should stipulate your findings in your actions, of course. I'm just going to run through fairly quickly without trying to be too redundant here on this. The findings and recommended actions for the 3 CUPs. I'll just highlight some of these that are most relevant. The reconstruction is not going to increase visibility from the roads from the St. Croix River, and I think that's a key finding. Reconstruction is proposed in a manner that minimizes visual impact. The 2 trees removed are being removed because of they reflect a safety hazard during construction. And applicant has submitted erosion and sediment control plans that meet county requirements. Key here that regarding the response to that no grant of a conditional use permit shall violate the spirit or general intent of the chapter. The request is to reconstruct 2 existing roads with and would not result in additional development, redevelopment, or population growth. The reconstructed roads are designed to conform to the standards in section 17.36 and therefore do not violate the spirit or general intent of the Riverway Overlay District. Regarding the point that no conditional use shall be allowed, which would be contrary to the public health, safety, and general welfare, or would be substantially adverse to the property values in the neighborhood affected. The main goal of the request is to improve drainage conditions for the purpose of public health, safety, and general welfare. And widening the roadways and repaving provides additional safety factor. And the combination of reduced stormwater impacts and widened roadway promotes an increase in property values. I'd note that regarding the point that no use shall be permitted by conditional use that would constitute a nuisance by reasons of noise, dust, smoke, or odor, or other factors. The construction work hours are restricted to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday to minimize noise impacts, and the applicant proposes to hire a contractor for water and dust control. The contractor will water roads as needed to control dust during construction. And lastly, regarding the board applying standards set forth in other sections of the chapter which would apply to particular classes of conditional use permits, any future cutting or clearing vegetation for road right-of-way maintenance shall be conducted in accordance with Section 17.36H14A5. Now, the recommendation regarding the first CUP request includes 5 conditions, and I won't call out each one of these, but would note that the proposed work would need to be constructed according to plans and specifications submitted with the CUP application. The applicant has 1 year from the issuance of the approval to commence reconstruction of the roads and 2 years to complete the project. Any changes to the current project details shall require review by the zoning administrator to determine further requirements. Going on to findings that we've recommended for the 2 CUPs related to the Ravine work. Again, I'll call out a few highlights and can field any questions you may have on any of the referenced findings. The applicant filed 2 CUP permit addendums in conjunction with the first CUP application for filling and grading, again, less than 10,000 square feet in slope preservation zone, and to install structural erosion control measures in slope preservation zone. And the project involves regrading of slopes of an eroding ravine and installing structural erosion control measures. And again, we're noting that we have on file and provided in the packet the easement agreements through the City of Stillwater and Mr. Studer's property. The additional findings, we're calling out the amount of area to be graded, both total area for these 2 CUPs as well as the area within the slope preservation zone, and noting that the project would not be visible from the St. Croix River again. And I would note that the structural erosion control measures are necessary to deal with erosion that is quite evident in the ravine. The stormwater management erosion control plans submitted are in accordance with ordinance requirements, and tree and brush removal required for the ravine work will remove primarily invasive or undesirable species, and the submitted vegetation management plan does comply with our applicable ordinance requirements. In terms of our criteria for evaluating CUPs, I would just note that in terms of not violating the spirit or general intent of the chapter, long-term effects of the project will reduce soil erosion and surface water contamination. So that's a positive. In terms of not affecting public health, safety, general welfare in an adverse way, the project positively impacts public health, safety, and welfare, again, by reducing the amount of stormwater sediment reaching the St. Croix River ultimately and adjacent properties. Work hours are being limited, and dust management will be implemented to minimize nuisance issues during the construction process. And lastly, the town of St. Joseph shall execute and record an affidavit describing approved structural erosion control measures and related maintenance requirements within the with the St. Croix County Register of Deeds within 30 days after construction is completed, as a additional a requirement that's appropriate for this project. The staff recommendation for the two CUPs involving the ravine work, we've kind of segmented this. We've included it in one action because we feel these two CUPs really are related. It doesn't make sense to approve or deny one without the other. So what we've done here is the first four conditions pertain to CUP number 2, the filling and grading operations less than 10,000 square feet in slope preservation zone, not directly facing the river. And again, they address, just call out 3 and 4 that address the tree removal and vegetation replacement, and also note that any change to the plans would require consultation with the county through myself as zoning administrator. The conditional use permits, the other conditional use permit, additional conditions that, again, referencing for both of them really that there's a year to start and 2 years to complete, and that the town will execute and record an affidavit describing the approved structural erosion control measures and related maintenance requirements with the Register of Deeds office. And then lastly, as is customary, accepting this decision means that the applicant has read, understands, and agrees to conditions of this decision and has no objections to the county staff conducting unannounced on-site inspections to check for compliance with this permit. I do have all the application materials available if any questions arise. I would just say that the representatives of the town have been very cooperative and helpful in addressing these county regulatory requirements, and they're here and can field any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Wozniak. Board members, do you have questions for him? Yep, the board chair also expresses gratitude to Mrs. Johnson and the town board for what appears to be a workmanlike job assembling the application. This is unlikely to be controversial, but let's see. Is there anybody in the room who wishes to speak either for or against this application, who has something to say to disagree with Mr. Wozniak or change the nature of the staff recommendation to the board, which has just been presented? Would you like to speak, sir? Yes. If you would, then please, assuming you've already signed in. Okay. You'd have to sign in. Do you want to disagree with the recommendation? I don't want to disagree. I want to ask a Oh, all right, then sign up and step over here to the microphone. Is there anybody else who's thinking of speaking on this? Possibly you will. Let me say about questions that one of the functions of the board, believe it or not, is not necessarily to educate the public. So when questions are asked, I, as this meanie chairman, make a decision whether we're going to answer the question or whether we're going to ignore it. Step up, sir, and ask your question. Of course, a question may serve a very good purpose in helping the board to see something that hasn't been highlighted before that we need to think about. Yes, sir, who are you? What is your name, please?
Ed Gilstrom.
Yes, Mr. Gilstrom, and where do you live?
I live just east of Holton. The
Okay,
property I'm talking about is my wife's property, which is in Holton, right on the street.
okay, you speak your piece.
My question is, when they do this, will there be any tax assessments to the people that live along the road?
Oh, well, that's an interesting question. It doesn't, it's not within the scope of this board. I don't know the answer, so I can't possibly answer you. The place to get a good answer to that question would be from the town board or town clerk. So I encourage you to go to them right after this hearing and get an answer. Anything else?
The other question is, will this be done completely on road property, or will it come in on other people's property?
Are you asking whether during construction they will need to get off the public property onto private property?
Will you be having to deal with any private property, or will it be all public property?
All right. I'll get an answer to that question if there's anybody in the room prepared to answer it. Thank you very much. Yep. Do you wish to take the microphone, Mrs. Johnson? Are you prepared to answer Mr.
I sure
Gilstrom's
am.
question? Thank you.
Thank you, Board, for having me. I'm Teresa Johnson, the Chair for the Town of St. Joseph. First of all, Ed, your taxes are not going to go up by this road, I can assure you. And second of all, we do have the 2 easements that we need to do this construction. Anything that takes place once we're on site, our engineer will handle, but at this point, we're expecting to stay within the right-of-way. So just to answer those 2.
Okay.
The town board has been working on this a long time. We had drainage issues in that area, but after the river crossing went through, it got significantly worse, and the people that are on the east end of that Church Street, which is about 2.5 blocks long, have incurred a lot of standing water throughout the summer, spring, summer, fall months. We've tried a variety of ways to try to figure out how to handle this, and the board instructed our engineering firm over a year ago to take a look at this. In 2020, we started an $8 million road project in the town. We have funds left over this year to complete this portion of it, and we set those aside to get this done. It is a very technical project that involves a whole lot of stuff, and my direction as a chair at the board meeting to the engineering firm is find a way to fix this so we don't have to look at it again. So this is a big deal for the town to take on. It is a lot of money to spend on 2.5 blocks of road plus Egard, but we also know that it is going to protect that river in the future. It's going to protect that ravine, and it's going to protect everyone else's properties on that road, because that storm sewer starting at what was 35, now Main Street, will go all the way to that corner and drop into that storm sewer and that rubble ditch that's going to go to the north. I think it's a win-win for everybody. I think it's a win-win for the river. I think it's a win-win for the county and the town and all the residents. So I'm looking forward to your support for this so we can get this project done this summer. Thank you. Any questions from anybody for me before I sit down? Okay.
I have a question. It was just mentioned that you got 2 years.
Yes.
How long do you think this will take?
We expect to get it done this summer, but we always ask for 2 years because then we can take another look at the erosion control the second year and make sure that all of the vegetation and stuff is growing as it should. So our project we just got done last year on our roads, we'll take a look at this summer and see what has to be tweaked and fixed on it. So we always like that 2-year window to, have a final completion. Because you never know if those 9 trees are all gonna grow, Something might have to be replaced. But
Yeah.
the construction itself will be this summer.
Okay.
We're expecting to go, if we get this approval, we're expecting to go to bid very shortly.
The reason I ask is obvious. This is next to the river, and we want to avoid pollution of the river.
Exactly.
And as time goes on, it's, I know you use silt fence and all the things to control erosion, but as time goes on, it becomes more problem. But yeah, fine.
Some of us are not able to climb out there, but I have seen a lot of pictures from those that did, and it's significant, the erosion that's taking place in that ravine, significant. And so for us to be able to control that, I think is really going to be great for the river, because eventually that's where it ends up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else in the room who wishes to speak on this topic? Maybe we can move right ahead to a decision by the board before hearing the next case even. Board members, do you have any questions for Mr. Wozniak now or any other issues? Or are you ready to express your opinion on a decision-making on it? All right, then I'm going to close the hearing, which is the formal step that says we'll take no more testimony and no more documentary evidence on the matter. Now it would be just internal debate or discussion with staff and hopefully leading to a decision, although there might be a decision to defer for more information. Who knows? I speak only for myself at this point. And now I'm going to stop speaking and see what the rest of the board wants to do.
I guess I'm ready to make the motion that we approve all 3 permit approvals as presented.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Mr. Nickam seconds it.
Aye.
Yeah, I'm going to recuse myself from this hearing because we have, as a Town of Hammond board member, we also have a contract with Stevens Engineering, so I'm gonna remove myself from this process.
Thank you, Joe. Have a good day. Do we have any procedural things to come back to, Ms. Denzer, after the conclusion of business? Or Mr. Wozniak, is there a reason for Joe to stay around today?
I do not believe there is a reason, and I also think it's probably best if he did exit.
Well, he'd have to leave the room, but I'm wondering if he
Yes.
can just go home.
I believe he could, other than the next date of the next meeting.
Well, let's talk about it right now and see if we can deal with the date of the next meeting while you're here.
Well, I can stick around, that's no problem. I can find other things to do.
Wow.
Okay.
Back to you, Mike.
Pardon me, I'm finding my way to the next presentation here.
Good show.
We had a lot of submittal information for the town's project.
Yes, it should be packet page 160.
Yeah,
This package of homework for us was, I think, 190 pages. I know it was too much for my old computer. But the staff was good enough to make me a printed copy.
Our next items for consideration of the board are two variance requests submitted by the applicant GV Investments, the agent for the project, Stevens Engineering. And I'll note that this project involves variance issues affecting three parcels of properties in section 20 and 21 within the town of Somerset. The current zoning, it's in the R2 zone district, and there is some floodplain overlay and shoreland overlay areas that affect part of the property. I would note that the request, two variance requests are being made, and these are variance to disturb slopes greater than 25%, to construct a driveway pursuant to, I'll reference, it's table 15.415.1 in the county's zoning ordinance, and a variance to encroach within the 5-foot driveway setback, again pursuant to table 15.425 in the county zoning ordinance. And we've included with the materials provided in the packet, the staff report, which I'm running through, the variance and addendum applications. There was a email correspondence from Linda and James Kuchar that are neighboring property owners. And also I would mention that you were provided, I believe, hard copy in front of you, a comment letter from the Wisconsin DNR that we received just yesterday. And so if you haven't had a chance to look at that, you may wish to do so before you take action. I'll highlight its contents, though, in my remarks. The request from the applicant is asking for these two variances to construct a 12-foot wide, 2,200-foot long driveway with a parallel retaining wall to access a preferred single-family dwelling location on the west edge of the westernmost parcel within the GV Investments ownership, with proximity to the St. Croix River. The proposed driveway will need to pass through an area where there is approximately 15 feet between an adjacent property owner's lot corner, and I'll show that in just a moment, and slopes exceeding 25% grade, which the construction would be prohibited within those steep slopes under Chapter 15 zoning requirements. The alternative options have been rejected or not otherwise pursued by the applicant. Shifting the driveway northwest would require an easement acquisition or fee title ownership from a bit of land from an adjacent property owner to encroach or cross property lines. And meeting the 5-foot driveway setback would result in greater impact to slopes exceeding 25%. The alternative driveway locations to the applicant's preferred building site, they consider not realistic due to the severity of surrounding slopes. The applicant does not consider these viable options as they would be unnecessarily costly and burdensome. The proposed driveway location is in the path of least resistance to their preferred building site. Now, just a visual of this. On this slide, all the parcels outlined in blue are under the applicant's ownership, and this totals approximately 315 total contiguous acres. The alternative building sites, I would note that alternative building sites are available for prospective dwelling locations, both on the same parcel and on other contiguous parcels under the applicant's ownership. Those would not be down right next to the St. Croix, the backwater area off the St. Croix River. They would be up above the bluff areas. The site is not within the Lower St. Croix Riverway Overlay District. Based on the legal description boundary found in 17.36K of the Riverway District county zoning. The proposed variance locations are approximately 750 feet back from the ordinary high water mark of the river, and the area outlined in red on this slide. And the alignment of the driveway generally follows this yellow line included on this slide. And the variance area basically affects three parcels where they meet at a corner. This slide notes surrounding slopes, and the project area is highlighted in this blue box here. There's kind of a pinch point. Although there's other sloped areas on the site, there's a pinch point where the alignment of an existing trail that would not meet driveway standards to serve a dwelling basically runs very close to an abutting property. And also you have the bluff slope preservation zone basically coming down right essentially into where the driveway would have to go. This is a little bit of a detail here, and I'll call out that slopes affected by this proposal would exceed 30%. The proposed section of the driveway would follow the path of an existing narrow access trail. The existing access trail is unpaved and it's vegetated. The first variance request is to disturb slopes greater than 25% and to construct a 12-foot gravel driveway, which is the standard county's minimum standard, and permit and a permanent retaining wall. On this slide, you can see the retaining wall from this point of my cursor following along as it runs through some of the steeper slope area. The second variance request is to encroach within the required 5-foot driveway setback from a property line to a distance of 2 feet from the property. And that, again, would be right at this corner, proposing to put the driveway surface 2 feet rather than 5 feet from that corner. This is just a little visual of one view of that area where you can see the property corner denoted and a 15-foot dimension to where that 25% or greater slope begins. And regarding supplemental shoreline standards review, pending approval of this request, if it were to be approved by the board, a land use permit would be required for land disturbance and the addition of impervious surface within 300 feet of a navigable body of water pursuant to Chapter 16, shoreland zoning, Section 16.335 and 16.345.3. In regards to general zoning standards, we have a few standards that would apply to this project. The driveway access standards, maximum grade at any point along a driveway is 12%. And so proposed grading would have to conform with that so that a resulting driveway wouldn't exceed 12% grade. Minimum surface mat of a driveway is 12 feet width. And so hence the existing trail and areas would have to be widened or to meet a 12-foot width requirement. The Section 15.415, grading and land disturbance, slopes governed by county ordinance must be measured over a horizontal distance of 50 feet. And area of variances is 355.9 feet. That's kind of lineal, the lineal feet, I believe, of the retaining wall. Regarding agency review, again, I'd call out, you did receive as of, the county received as of yesterday, January 26th, a letter from the DNR, and I am going to just reflect on that a little bit because I think it is relevant to what the staff recommendation for these requests would be. Basically, what the DNR has done is they've recognized the criteria that we're obligated to use to consider variances, including unique physical limitations, that no harm to public interest would occur, and that unnecessary hardship has been demonstrated. And I would note in the DNR's letter that that they note that physical limitations must be unique to the property in question and not generally shared by other properties in the area. And in the case of the slope issues, well, the properties in the area, there's a lot of bluff areas along the St. Croix. The steep slopes are very common on those properties in that general area, so that isn't necessarily unique just to this property. Regarding no harm to public interest, the DNR's letter included within their comments is that the applicant must demonstrate that the variance will not result in harm or be contrary to public interest, and they're calling out that the board must consider impacts of the proposed project as well as the cumulative impacts of similar projects on the interests of the neighbors, the community, and the general public. And they call out specifically the need to protect public health, safety, and welfare, maintenance of clean water, protection of fish and wildlife habitat, and preservation of natural scenic beauty. And lastly, when they call out unnecessary hardship, I guess they're making a point here that courts have also determined that economic and financial hardship does not justify a variance. When determining whether unnecessary hardship exists, the board must consider the property as a whole rather than just a portion of the property. I'll note that Town of Somerset did consider these requests and has recommended approval at their January 5th town board meeting. Again, we included a email from James and Linda Kuchar requesting the variance be denied as Exhibit 3. And I'll note that the DNR letter is referenced as Exhibit 4, and it's marked accordingly. Regarding the applicable statutes and criteria, usually I make reference to this and don't run through it specifically, but in this case, our staff recommendations are board denial of these requests. So I want to make a point to address this slide. The section 15.570 of county zoning ordinance establishes a process for the Board of Adjustment to vary a standard of the zoning ordinance. And I'd note that Wisconsin statutes 59.694 7C to authorize upon appeal in specific cases variances from the terms of ordinance that will be contrary to the public interest, where owing to special conditions, a literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance will result in unnecessary hardship, so that the spirit of the ordinances shall be observed and substantial justice can be done. So that's a measure that really has to be met for the board to justify approval of a variance, or in this case, 2 variances. To qualify for a variance, an applicant has the burden of proof to demonstrate that all 3 criteria are met, as defined in the Wisconsin Supreme Court rulings. And the criteria are as follows, the 3 listed. There must be a unique property limitation preventing strict compliance with the ordinance. The applicant must prove unnecessary hardship exists when compliance would unreasonably prevent the owner from using the property for a permitted purpose or would render conformity with such restrictions unnecessarily burdensome. And 3, a variance may not be granted which results in harm to the public interest. Public interest should be derived from the spirit, intent of the ordinance. Further, I'd note regarding statutes and criteria, Board of Adjustment may issue a variance to dimensional standards only when the ordinance and statutory criteria are satisfied, and we call out in section 15.5706B of our zoning ordinance that a variance shall not be granted for a hardship based solely on economic gain or loss, or be granted for a hardship which is self-created, or damage the rights or property values of other persons in the area, or allow any alteration of a historic structure, including its use, which would preclude its continued designation as a historic structure, or allow in any district uses not permitted in that district, or lastly, otherwise violate Wisconsin law. Section 15.5705D of the ordinance states that in granting a variance, the Board of Adjustment may prescribe appropriate conditions and safeguards which are in conformity with the purposes of the chapter. So your options with this are to recommend approval of both requests, to deny both requests, I should say, and to approve one request or deny the other, or to table and postpone a decision to absorb information gathered, request additional information, or to direct staff to prepare revised or additional findings, I would suggest. The board should must stipulate findings to support their decision for approval or denial. I'll run through our recommended findings of fact and staff recommendations now. Again, we've included some of the information in the application, the factual information about the property. But getting down to number 4, the parcels are not located in the lower St. Croix Riverway district. I would reference that point. We did refer it to the National Park Service, a staff person, to make them aware of it, and did receive some feedback from them, but nothing more questioning the district boundaries rather than any comments on the proposal specific. And we're fairly confident of the overlay district boundaries, and that this property does not lie within it. The purpose of the 2,200-foot driveway is to access a preferred future dwelling location within proximity of the St. Croix River. The parcels involved largely consist of slopes exceeding 25%. The slopes to be disturbed exceed 30%, measured over a horizontal distance of 50 feet. And the proposed driveway location is the path, I would note, is the path of least resistance to access the desired or preferred single-family location down, again, near the river. The applicant's requesting to reduce the driveway setback from the property line to 2 feet instead of the required 5 feet. And I'll note that we've referenced the distance from the high water mark of the river. There is approximately 15 feet between the neighboring property line and slopes exceeding 25%. And I'll note that I have prepared a decision document that would reflect what's in the staff report, unless you decide to act differently or change it. And I have adjusted number 13 here, since we have received comment from the DNR. The Town of Somerset has recommended approval, as I previously noted, and of both variances. And I'll note that alternative building sites are available for prospective dwelling locations, both on the subject parcel and on other contiguous parcels under the applicant's ownership. And slope disturbance and length of the proposed driveway will have considerable long-term negative impact to the environment due to disturbance of and proximity to steep slopes and potential water runoff and erosion on and adjacent to the driveway that would impact the proposed building site and the St. Croix Riverway. I would note that the numbering, I think we missed the numbering here. The additional 2 findings should be number 17 and 18. If you go with these findings, we have that correct in a draft decision document prepared pending your action. But I would note here, to qualify for a variance to the applicant has the burden of proof to demonstrate that all 3 requirements defined in state statute are met. And regarding unnecessary hardship, alternatives considered by the applicant have been identified by them as costly and burdensome. A financial hardship does not constitute a hardship per statutory definition. The applicant's preferred future dwelling location would result in a self-created hardship. They have other options in terms of where they could build. Surrounding parcels owned by the applicant contain alternative compliant building site areas for a driveway and a dwelling without the need for variance approval. Regarding unique property limitations, I just call out that staff doesn't feel that there are any unique property limitations present. Steep slopes are common along the bluff and the St. Croix River, including significant areas with slopes exceeding 25%. So in that regard, these 3 parcels aren't that different from a lot of the other parcels in that immediate area. And although the driveway route may be the path of least resistance to the preferred dwelling location, alternative building area and driveway locations within the applicant's contiguous land holdings are available. And to qualify for the variance, the applicant, again, has the burden of proof to demonstrate that all requirements are met. And in terms of no harm to the public interest, the county has a strong regulatory interest in protecting the bluff line, the bluffs, and the water quality of the St. Croix River. Existing trees and vegetation will be impacted. The applicant's intent to stabilize and minimize disturbances to sensitive slopes using a retaining wall, which will address some short and long-term impacts, is a measure they would be taking to try to address that. However, slope disturbance and length of the proposed driveway have considerable potential for long-term negative impact to the bluff line and water quality of the St. Croix due to disturbance of and proximity to steep slopes and potential water runoff and erosion on and adjacent to the driveway. And the residence on the adjacent parcel is approximately 800 feet away, I just note, and they are trying to proposing to use earth tones for the retaining wall construction, although I don't know how visible that wall is from most likely vantage points on other properties. Staff recommendation. Based on the findings we've recommended in the staff report, we're recommending that the variances do not meet the 3 applicable ordinance and statutory criteria to grant a variance. Therefore, staff recommend denial of the variance request to disturb slopes greater than 25% and the variance request to encroach within the 5-foot driveway setback from a property line pursuant to the standards referenced in the applicable ordinance tables. I'll note that we have all the application materials included in the packet available to pull up electronically here if any discussion warrants that. And I would indicate, because of our recommendation for denial, that you certainly offer the applicant opportunity to comment and represent their point of view on this, on these 2 variance requests.
Is it your position, Mr. Wozniak, that the staff concludes that the applicant has met none of the 3 criteria, and even though the failure to meet any one would be grounds for denial?
Yeah, that is our view, in that.
Okay, I thought that's what I was hearing.
Yes.
And you say the DNR agrees with you?
Yes.
According to Exhibit 4. Okay, board members, do you have any questions for Mr. Wozniak? Okay, we customarily ask for those who want to speak in favor of the application, so that would be in opposition to the report that's just been given, to speak next. And then I call on those who take the contrary view, which today would be agreeing with the staff. And lastly, anybody who isn't necessarily on one side or the other, but has something important to say. Again, before speaking, please step up and sign our documentation. Okay, who would like to speak in favor of this?
Good morning. I am Angela Popenhagen with Stevens Engineers, and I just want to hit on a few pieces along the way. We are asking for these 2 variances for the fact that it is the path of least resistance. It also is compromises kind of between the trying to minimize as less slopes as possible, and also staying away from the adjacent property owner and not having to do any work on their property. Categorizing this as a based solely on economic gain or loss, I think is very misrepresentation. Mr. Pakkanen, as you know, as we've shown, we're building, we're proposing a retaining wall. Maximum height would be 4 to 5 feet, but we have 130 feet of retaining wall. I mean, cost is not the issue here. What is the issue is getting around a property corner, which also was characterized that this is a unique property. Yes, there are slopes along there, but you will see how many other people have developed and have a residence pretty much right along the river. We are being pigeonholed in that pinch point. So we also, if you look at his whole contiguous area, the 315 acres, obviously is well aware of the slopes, but we also have Indian burial grounds on there. So the actual usable property is about half of what is shown. And then this also then would eliminate another 25% of the property that is usable. So this is just further minimizing his use of property, and basically, as said before, you know, this is a substantially adverse to the property value. I mean, I see that as being the only cost issue, is you're now taking away even more of the property that is usable. So I heard that term used just previously, so I want to make sure that it is, we're comparing apples to apples here. So has, yep, that's all right.
Interject something. Do I hear you saying that approximately half of the 350 acres is unbuildable after you subtract steep slopes and Indian burial grounds?
That's correct.
All right.
The 315 acres, yes, correct. You're taking off.
And then you went on to say another quarter of it would be lost by removing this
Right.
site right next to the river, which is the preferred location.
Exactly. So
Okay.
that
I understand.
we're minimizing that. As far as looking at alternative options, there is no other alternative option as far as accessing that area. We did not want to, or you know, Mr. Packinen did not want to approach the adjacent property owner because it's not their, you know, they should not be burdened by his trying to get a driveway through there. And, you know, they have sent an email of denial, you know, requesting denial. So I believe that would have been a futile effort trying to get there, basically purchasing additional land as well. As I said, we want to look at, you know, we are putting in significant retaining wall to try to minimize, we're trying to minimize any impacts whatsoever. And similar to the last applicant, we are going to use every erosion control measure we need to make sure that there is not any further erosion beyond what is disturbed right now.